Do you crave better self-esteem and confidence, but struggle to silence your anxiety, fears, and insecurities? If so, welcome to the sisterhood of fellow travelers on the path to reclaiming their self-confidence and happiness. I'm Jennifer DeBellis, award-winning author, speaker, and assault survivor. I spent the past few decades helping young women like you overcome fear, self-doubt, and trauma to reclaim their joy and self-worth. I cannot wait to share the secrets I learned on my own healing journey and help you restore your inner warrior as I show you the skills and tools you need to save your own broken world. If you're ready to empower your inner warrior to overcome fear, doubt, and anxiety, turn off those distractions and tune in to this episode. In previous episodes, we talked about ways to heal our inner wilderness by confronting fear, doubt, and recalibrating how we navigate difficult situations. Today's episode will peel back the layers on the perfectionism onion to dissect how and why it stinks up our life and contributes to those difficult situations. A few days ago, we talked about how to identify and deal with enemies in our camp. You know, those folks and triggers that keep us on our toes during interactions. What if I told you that we are sometimes the foe and the enemy, and the one setting off triggers in our quest to have everything go perfectly or exactly the way we want it to? Not only does this make things stink for us when things don't go as planned, it stinks on one level or another for everyone involved. That's right. Perfectionism is a stinky onion that stings everyone's eyes who comes in contact with it. It even makes us cry in frustration at times, or walk away with unfinished business because we just can't handle the stink or stench and we're just plain frustrated. But don't give up hope. I'm about to show you how to flip your thinking and actions so you can still be yourself and a person who wants and gets those high quality interactions and outcomes that you desire. I put together this Restore Your Inner Warrior series, Empower Pack tools that will help you strengthen your inner warrior and overcome the things holding you back from living your best life. If you're ready to boldly step into a life with improved happiness and confidence, turn off those distractions running in the background and tune into this next episode, which is about to supercharge your inner healing journey. And welcome back to all my listeners already walking with me down this restoration path. In this episode, you'll gain a deeper understanding of the difference between perfectionism and doing things with excellence, hear how my own experiences with these concepts helped reshape my perspective and the way I plan and live my life, and learn some tricks you can try to retrain your thinking on striving to live with excellence in place of perfectionism. Before I start to dismantle the touchy topic of perfectionism, I want to remind you to join my Facebook group, the Restore Your Inner Warrior Sisterhood. Here's a safe space to share stories, get tips, and find community. I'm also doing a coaching giveaway right now. I have a poll that's pinned at the top of the group. If you just enter an answer to one of the questions, I think there's like 7 questions, and one of them is like a write-in if none of the questions apply to you. Every time you select one of those things, which is just like, what's your biggest struggle right now? You will be entered into the drawing that I will be giving away 2 to 3 1-hour free coaching sessions. So the coaching is coming in the next few weeks, so stay tuned for that as well. Okay, so to begin, let's talk a little bit about perfectionism and why it's destructive no matter how we try to present it. I am actually excited to talk to you about this topic today because I do deal with this topic with a lot of my coaching clients, as well as when I'm talking loved ones through difficult things. It's usually centered on this topic of perfectionism and the anxiety and the worry and the stress that it provokes. So obviously, perfection doesn't exist. It's an imaginary concept. Let's just start right there. Even when things go exceptionally well and without any real problems, it's still not considered perfect. There's mastering something, there's doing things with precision and accuracy, and there's a place for these things. There's doing things with excellence, but there is no such thing as perfection of something being perfect, completely flawless. It is an illusion. It's a fig Newton of our imagination. It just doesn't exist. So when we master something, we learn to do it well.
There's trial and error involved in this process. Obviously, we're doing things, we're learning from the experience, we're making corrections in real time, and we're educating ourselves. We're studying, we're apprenticing how other people do this thing that we want to do better, or how we want to become a master at it ourselves. When you think about like, if you want to learn how to do something, you take lessons or you go to YouTube or TikTok and look up tutorials and you watch those and you keep learning those skills, or you're reading books, or doing other things that we train ourselves, taking classes. And yes, we can become an expert, but again, that level of expertise doesn't make us perfect. It just makes us highly knowledgeable in that particular area. When you think about, there is a 10% error ratio with humans. 10%. That's the average. So the average person can do things, master things, do things without error, let's say 90% of the time. That's the average person. And then when it comes to mastering these things, we also stand to learn something new or a better way. Things are constantly changing and we have to adapt, and we have to then have different actions to go with those changes. We have to adapt what we want as an outcome as well. I've talked about that a lot in previous episodes, where you have to know what you want, you have to be striving toward what you want, and then you have to make adjustments when things don't go according to plan, or when the circumstances change, or maybe you change, or you just don't want things the same way you wanted them when you first set up those expectations or those goals or desires. I learned this in the writing industry. So, as a writer and an editor, I spend a lot of time trying to help people, you know, make their writing the best possible shape that it can be in, to prepare it for publication or to prepare it to share with different audiences and individuals in different, professional and creative outlets. And depending on the type of editing that I'm doing, I can't focus on all these things at the same time. And I had to make peace with that. So a lot of times when a client wants to work with me and they want to do all of these things, I want you to developmentally edit my manuscript, for instance. I want you to help me fix my characters, my plot holes. I want you to help me reorganize my poetry collection and help me figure out what those holes are in the narrative arc. And, once you get intimate with the collection, I want you to help me figure out how to expand in these kind of gapped areas, and then offer me feedback on the individual poems and, throughout the collection. And that's all one type of editing. And actually, that's several types of editing, but in each one of those projects, it would be one type of editing. And a lot of times people are also asking me to help them prepare their manuscript to send to a publisher, or to send out to potential publishers when they're shopping with their manuscript. And that's a different type of editing. That's where all of my focus is channeled in on making sure that the language and the syntax is right, and the punctuation and all those things are working optimally. I cannot master both of those things at the same time. And if I allow myself, I will go crazy, and clients will go crazy, because I might be developmentally editing something and I'm not focused on fixing all of the different issues, or, focusing on like, oh, they always use a comma in their sentence structure that is not accurate. And I'm not editing that out right now. I'm focused on other things. And so maybe in the next round, I'll start to edit those commas out. And then they're like, why are you putting mistakes in the document? You should have pointed it out the first time. And it just becomes this, because I'm working on one beast at a time, and I'm not even looking at those things. And so I'm not the type of editor that is going to notice all of them. I mean, I'm going to notice some of the things, but I'm not going to notice all of them. That is not my focus. I get in the tunnel and I am really focused on getting into the essence of the work and looking for those things. And then it's another read and an additional read where I'm going and focusing on different things, because I may catch half of those things just because, they stand out to me as like, oh, that needs to be edited, but that's not my focus. So the idea of perfecting that step isn't going to happen if I'm doing a different type of editing. It's just not going to happen. And that's why I have to price packages to compensate for these additional types of editing and these additional types of read through. And then, of course, when your client turns the manuscript back around to you with like their new ideas and, oh, I expanded this area, like you said, and I changed this and added to this. Now you've got to go and look at all these things. Again, depending on the different types of editing, you're looking at the content development editing and the context editing, two totally different things. And maybe there's an editor out there that masters all of those things at the same time, but I know my strengths and I play to those strengths. And I just try to do those things exceptionally well and then come back the next round focusing on that different focus. And I give myself the grace to know that, hey, I'm going to find some things that I didn't even notice going through the first time. So that's kind of something that was a very humbling, lesson for me when I started to edit other people's stuff. There's also a time and a place for doing things with precision and accuracy. This kind of reminds me of doing projects with my husband. So you're going to hear me rant about my husband a lot. He might annoy you too, but he's a perfect example sometimes for some of these things. So when we talk about perfectionism, my husband is the opposite of perfectionist. He is like, it's good enough. When you ask him to do things, he's like, I want to get it done. I don't want to be doing this all day. It's good enough. He wants to use his brute strength to kind of force things back together. He likes that instant gratification. And he tends to rub perfectionists off the wrong way. He irritates them, probably the most out of all the people he irritates. So for decades, we've owned our own business. And there are things that he does with excellence, which I'm going to talk about, the difference between perfectionism and doing things with excellence. But whenever we've had to work with someone who has this perfectionism mindset, it has been this clashing of minds and of wills because he, again, is the opposite. He likes to, do things. If there's something to put together or take apart and reassemble, there will always be parts left over. And he's got a big pile of them and he's like, oh, there's a bunch of nuts and bolts left over. I'm not sure what you want to do with those. And you're literally like, I know that those nuts and bolts had a spot because you took that apart and repaired something and then put it back together. And now what's going to happen? Is this going to all break down after we start using it? And that's been a thing forever and ever and ever. So we try not to tell him that things need repair. We kind of like do it ourselves because again, we want things to be done with excellence. And so we have differing opinions on how things need to be fixed. But, when it comes to having extra parts, that's a big deal. You don't need something falling apart when you're using it or malfunctioning and you get hurt or it just doesn't last long. So you're constantly having to replace things because they weren't assembled properly. So yeah, there's that time and place for doing things with accuracy, doing things with precision. You don't just want them to function properly. You might want them to aesthetically look pleasing as well. It's like home improvements. I no longer ask him to hold the miter box or to even cut something for me because he measures once and cuts. That's not how you're supposed to do stuff. And then he'll go back and be like off by like this much. And so he'll just cut another piece of wood. And so like in our old house, we had a lot of molding that just looked like, I don't know, like a kid in junior high did it in shop class. And so I learned, don't ask him to do those things or don't ask him to take charge of those things. Now, research shows that perfectionism is a leading cause of anxiety and worry, which is why it's wise to learn to manage it at the root. You've really got to start dismantling the thinking that is involved in this kind of perfectionism mindset to then open yourself up to different ways of doing things, different ways of setting up your expectations. Living in the shadow of perfectionism really does overwhelm us with constant pressure to achieve this impossible thing, this impossible results as we and those around us, don't forget about the people who also have to live around us, all fail to live up to these unattainable standards. It makes us and those around us feel like we're always falling short, and this kills our self-esteem and confidence. This is like one of the number one things that kills people's self-esteem and confidence. And it just fills them with dread because when they're trying to go and do things, now they're like, what's going to go wrong? Or it has to be perfect. It has to go this way, or I'm going to lose my crap, or I'm just not going to do this anymore. And all those things start to overshadow, and it's like this big storm cloud that starts to brew over us, and it's kind of just like looking for the perfect opportunity to unleash its full fury. It traps us in this vicious cycle of guilt and shame also. And this is something that I talk about in my self-help book, Warrior Sister, Cut Yourself Free. There is a link for this down in the show notes. So if you want to check out the book, you can find links to get more information on that below. But guilt and shame, it provokes this black and white thinking for starters, when really life is full of a lot of gray areas. So when you think about most situations, there's a lot of gray area in between. And yet we find ourselves a lot when we're in interactions trying to argue for this like it's one way or the other. There's a wrong way and a right way. It's black and white. That's it. My husband also is a very black and white thinking person. And of course, I'm like, there's so many different shades of gray in between here. And we just have to find our way to one that works for us in this particular situation. So I have driven him nuts in this regard, our whole relationship. He's driven me nuts in this regard. And somehow we make that work out and we balance each other out in the end by, getting each other to understand and operating compassion for the other individual. And this helps us in all of our different interactions, relationships, not just between the two of us. But this right or wrong thinking, there's only one way or the highway, is a logical fallacy, first of all. It's often a logical fallacy. We see this so much in mass media. We see it a lot in politics, for instance, and all of the social media commentary and the bantering that goes back and forth and the reporting of this happening, that happening, where it creates this false narrative and this false logic of it's only one way or the other. And again, that when you start to operate that way, you can very easily fall into the cycle of guilt and shame for not seeing things that way. That's one way that this happens, where you start to feel that guilt and shame and then operate in that way. And it feels awful, whether you are just doing something all on your own and you're imposing this feeling of guilt and shame on yourself for not doing better, not doing something, following through, not making the progress that you think you should be making, or when other people do it to you. And a lot of, individuals are raised by parents that kind of put that kind of pressure on them. They use, condemnation tactics instead of conviction tactics, where again, you're just shaming and guilting the child to try to get them to learn the lesson. But really, what that's doing is just making them feel really awful about what they did, instead of putting them in the mindset of wanting to learn and grow from the experience to then correct and change their thinking and then their behavior that comes and stems out of that thinking. And that's where operating with conviction is the more powerful way, because it's free of guilt and shame. It gives you that space to be like, okay, you didn't get it 100% right, or that didn't go 100% the way you wanted it to go. So what are you going to do about it? How are you going to assess the situation? How are you going to make different decisions based on, what you notice about the situation and how you now think about the situation in light of what you now know about the situation after looking at it. So this all leads me to that mindset of doing things with excellence. And that's exactly where I love to spend my time and where I thrive and where I see a lot of people, whether it's loved ones or, friends or coworkers or my coaching clients, thrive. Is this idea of, doing things to try to just have the best possible results with the time and the tools and the resources that you're given in that given moment. When my kids were growing up, we used to love watching the home network, where all those home remodeling shows or the flip it shows were on, and then the Food Network. So we're foodies and we love watching these home improvement shows. I am a interior design person. I'm a recycle artist, so I love that kind of stuff. My kids are very creative also. And so we would love watching these shows. But one of the things that I always loved about the show was that kindred spirit of doing like exceptional things with the time that they had, because a lot of these shows was like, this is the team, this is the amount of time that we have. Even those flip it shows, they're like, we have 30 days to flip this house. And then you're getting like the Cliff Notes version, the 30-minute version of the 30-day restoration, or you're getting the 30-minute or the 60-minute of the two teams competing in a different house saying, we're redoing this and we're redoing this. And we have a budget of $100 or $1,000 or something crazy, right? So it's like, you have very limited resources, very limited time. You have all of these different personalities. Most of the time, it's not one person. By design, these shows are supposed to do that because now you've got that obstacle of different minds that are going to conflict with one another. But if you put those minds together and utilize some of these skills, you're going to come up with things that you clearly wouldn't have come up with on your own, especially when things start to get kind of wonky and you're like, we don't have enough money for the right tools, or this just broke, or we just found this damaged thing, and what are we going to do now? So I always love that those shows because I got it. They were speaking my language. My whole life has been filled with job experiences, volunteer and community experiences, even running my own home where like you don't always have the right amount of time to do something or resources or finances. And the thing that you want is like, nope, not in the budget. So now you're like, now what are we going to do? Or you're painting and you're like, oh my God, I don't have $500 to buy all the paint that I need for this in that color. So what can I do? We can go and buy all the clearance paint. We can come back, put it in pails, mix it with white, mix it to the colors that we want. And my whole house is filled with that, where I'm getting paint for like 70% off and making it work, doing the hard manual labor of painting and mixing the paint myself and then actually doing the work and painting and then putting the rooms back together and maybe updating some of the decor by thrifting some things and mixing it with new things and all those things that go into using the time, the money, and the resources and the skills that we have in all of those things coming together and just producing the best possible thing that we could, given all those circumstances. And having the grace to know that it's not going to be perfect. Perfect doesn't exist, but it's going to be beautiful and it's going to be an improvement. And so by having that mindset going in, like we're improving something and look at these amazing things that we're doing with what we have. When you go in with that mindset, it takes a lot of that stress and worry away. I mean, you're still going to have stress. It's very stressful to paint the whole inside of a house, for instance. There's no way around it. We actually like painting and it's still stressful. Something happens or things don't go right, and then you're dealing with those types of stresses. The last thing you need is to give yourself this compounded stress over things that you can't even control anyway, or having unrealistic expectations that are again, not realistic. So they have no place in this equation at all. So we're putting all that extra pressure on ourselves and just sucking all of the joy out of it. So if you have any joy in the situation, and now you're sucking all of it out because every point and every turn, every layer of that onion is all this stinky stuff. It's all this just, you know, negative thoughts and impossible things. And on top of it, what could go wrong and all the worry and the compounding and all that happens with it. What if I told you that the secret to overcoming perfectionism is really to just reorient our understanding of what we mean by perfect and how striving for excellence can lead to the same kind of fulfillment? So that kind of is bringing it full circle for what I mean by, if you think about that label and change it to, I want this to be perfect. I want everything to be perfect, which I hear people say that all the time. I have a daughter who's like that. I want everything to be perfect. When you change that kind of thinking, then you open yourself up to still plan with those same grandiose plans. I want it to be this, I want it to be that. And then you set out to execute all of these things with excellence. And you say, I know when we're done with this, it is going to be the best possible version that we could come up with in this time, with these resources, with this, amount of money, all those things. I think about when my husband and I got married, we paid for our whole entire wedding ourselves. And we studied. We knew we had been through wedding seasons with other family members. So we did our homework. We worked 4 jobs each, 3 and 4 jobs. We saved up. We knew what we needed. We didn't finance anything. We paid cash for our wedding, which is pretty remarkable. And then 4 weeks before our wedding, I got in a motorcycle accident, almost died. And everything was, on track up to those 4 weeks. And you still have, the month before your wedding, there are so many loose ends. There are so many things you still have to do. And now I'm like, oh my God, right? I'm fighting for my life. I'm in therapy. At the beginning, I was having to go to the hospital 3 times a day for whirlpool therapy. And then once I was done with that, I had to start going to the hospital twice a day for physical therapy. And it was like, in the beginning, it was like all of these different things, plus going back to work pretty soon after that, and then the wedding. And all of that thinking had to really change to like, okay, how can we pull off everything we want to pull off with excellence as best, as close to what we desire as possible? What do we need to adjust? All of that stuff had to go into it. And it was an amazing wedding. When I look back and I think about everything we were able to pull off, it's incredible. It's an incredible feeling to be on the other side of that and to look back and what didn't get done and what you didn't get to have. But the party's amazing, your guests don't know, and you make peace with those things. Okay, so this really comes down to making these mindset shifts. And I wanted to talk about something really quick before I forget to mention this. I know there's a lot of commentary that comes up in therapy or when you're talking to somebody else, or even when you're just Googling information that talks about, oh, you got to learn from your mistakes. But that's another trigger word when you say mistakes. That comes into a whole different category. Sometimes it's not a mistake. Just because things don't go exactly as planned doesn't mean it's a mistake. So if we can try to get that word out of our vocabulary, it might be really, really helpful. That might be the biggest takeaway that you get from this whole entire episode is to get rid of the word mistake. It doesn't have a place here because, again, it's not a proactive term. And I'm not saying, oh, we're perfect, we don't make mistakes. Here we are talking about not being perfect. I'm saying stop thinking about it and looking at it that way. That yes, there will be times when things have to go a certain way or they're supposed to go a certain way, and you make mistakes, you don't do things that you were supposed to maybe do, or things just don't go as planned, and it's a mistake. But I'm talking about the other side of it, which is when things don't go the way we anticipated or the way we hoped, that we just learn from the experience. And when we open ourselves up to that mindset to look at every situation, like, okay, what didn't go? What did go the way we expected it to go or hoped that it would go? And then we learn and we grow from that experience. And when we do that, this is what shapes us. Either shapes us, just so you know. You can go into every single situation and come out with that guilt and shame. I made mistakes and I need to fix them for the next time. That's going to shape you. Probably not into the version of yourself that you want to. It probably already has shaped you into a version of yourself where you're frustrated and why you're here trying to figure out how to get past this thing called perfectionism. The other side of it is we can be shaped by looking at it like every single experience is going to teach us something. It's going to teach us something about ourselves. So even if we don't learn something about the situation, like that we need to adjust or correct something or do something differently the next time, we're still learning about ourselves. We're still learning about other people. We're still learning about the environment that the situation exists in. There's all these different angles of learning that shape us. And in one of those instances, our compassion is shaped in these instances. And our compassion can be shaped by us always looking critically and negatively, like people are making so many mistakes, or it can be shaped from a more compassionate place, which is what can we learn and grow and improve next time around. So you see that mindset. It's not all rainbows and toxic positivity. Please, I'm never going to tell you to be toxically positive. I cannot stand toxic positivity. I'm going to do a whole episode on that. I've talked about it in previous episodes, but I think I'm going to do a whole episode on that, building off of this concept. But when we're looking at these experiences, we are trying to then learn from them by making meaning. What do we discover when we reflect on how things went? We're analyzing our prior experience. We're researching to learn from others, which again, we can go back to all the different ways we research, we learn from others. I say research, and sometimes people are like, oh, that sounds like school, that sounds like homework. But really, every time you Google or search something and you pull up a YouTube or you pull up an article or you pull up a TikTok and you save it or you watch it and you're trying like, oh, how do they do that? Or how do I find this answer? You're researching. So when I say research, that's what I mean. You don't have to read scholarly articles, although I do encourage you to do that. I read a ton of scholarly articles throughout my whole lifetime, but when I almost died a few months ago, I was reading all types of scholarly articles and case studies so that I could figure out what the heck was wrong with me so that I could live and that I could heal and I could thrive because nobody wants to live sick. That's really not living. So, there's a time and a place to do that type of research, but I'm just talking about all the different modes and methods that we use to learn from others. We don't need to reinvent the wheel all the time. Most of the time, someone else has already done something that we can glean some kind of beneficial information from and grow in our knowledge and grow in our understanding so that we can apply their stuff, just like what draws you to listening to podcasts like this. You're trying to draw from someone else's knowledge and experience and their tools and their tricks. For all of these things, we can adjust in real time. So when we keep these skills sharpened, we can always make those adjustments in real time when it's possible. And so we don't have to be like, oh, I see it's running away in the wrong direction. Just let it play out. No, like if you can adjust in real time, then do that. And if you can't, then you're just trying to figure out what you can do next time around in that type of situation or situations that are similar or situations with that individual. Next, we must give ourselves and others grace and room to be individuals and human. That's right, I had to go there. So, fear of failure and criticism, those hide in the shadows of a perfectionism lifestyle, and they also come out in really negative, toxic ways. Same with the critical spirit and always blaming people. You did that wrong. You always screw things up. You see that starts to come out. And a lot of times when we're working with other individuals on something and that fear and that anxiety and that stress starts to come up and we are ourselves trying to deal with our feelings and our emotions of, oh my God, I'm going to fail. Oh my God, I'm going to get rejected. Oh my God, they're going to criticize me. I don't like when people correct me or criticize me. And all that starts to rise up. It tends to provoke this kind of evil version of us. It's like the bridezilla complex. You know what I'm talking about. So it's like when things don't go wrong and you start to, lash out at everybody around you. That's that stenchy, stinky onion kind of a thing. It happens. I have never met a perfectionist who didn't over worry and stress about everything. There's that aspect as well. And the fact that it breeds a need to control everything and everyone around us. So when you think about this scenario that I'm giving you right now, where you can become the toxic person and your own enemy and everybody's enemy in the camp by just blah, right? Losing control of yourself and berating everybody, including yourself in the situation, is that it also puts you in this mindset where now you are fighting or pushing to take control of everything. because everyone and everything around you is just incompetent. They're just not getting it right. And it just kind of like, it just provokes all these different qualities out of an individual in the situation. It also, in the same regard, breeds this kind of need to be validated and to have that approval from others. And that right there has us working under the wrong type of motives. So you no longer have the motive of enjoying this thing or accomplishing this thing, whatever you're setting out to do. Now it's about executing it to get approval, executing it to get validation. And it's a whole other situation then. Just think about that. Just let yourself think about that for a minute. I don't want to digress into that. So it's really good to have goals and high standards. Okay, that's great. It's unreasonable, though, to expect everything to go well and exactly as planned. No person or situation can live up to this standard. To restate, there's no such thing as this perfect situation. It doesn't exist. Okay, it's a fig Newton of your imagination. In place of this flawlessness, we should opt for progress and doing the best that we can with what, again, is at our disposal. And finally, we must be willing to admit when we need help or a healthy outlet to share our struggles with. So I talk a lot in the different episodes about different therapies and different strategies that I use. And I don't always name the clinical names for them. And sometimes I feel like, okay, I should probably introduce this concept because it comes into play a lot and I'm talking about it. Let's give it a name, especially in an instance right now where I'm saying you could actually ask a therapist or find a therapist that specializes in this particular thing. But so what I want to talk to you about is cognitive behavioral therapy, which is CBD, is the abbreviation for it in the industry. And this is talk therapy simplified. And when I say talk therapy, it's like with a twist because a lot of the strategies that I share with you are the same types of strategies that you could do with a therapist or a counselor or a mentor or just a good, trusted individual in your life who gives you sound advice, who's a good listener, who seeks to understand before they give you sound advice and guidance. But I also give you a lot of this stuff to do on your own. So it's like this talk therapy then becomes here's all these ways that you can practice it just on your own, all by yourself. And then you can often, once you start to identify some of those emotions and some of those things and triggers, then you can go to a trusted individual and you can go deeper with it. A lot of times, these same individuals, especially those in the professional world, will give you this homework. They'll tell you to go and do these particular exercises and come back to them with your homework done. And so I'm not just making up this twist part of it. It's a real thing. So I'm not going to get into all the different CBD therapy techniques, but I'm going to talk about two of them here because these two are things that I do reference in a lot of different episodes and a lot of different strategies that I personally have tried and tested and had great success with. And I've had great success with them in settings where I'm with a trusted individual, like a mentor or somebody, loved one who I trust, or if I'm just on my own. So they've been incredibly helpful to me. So this is the first one. And, there are lots of ways that we can do this, but I'm going to give you the ones that I really, really love. So one step is to identify negative thoughts, to challenge and change them. And I don't know a better way to do this than to journal. So I know I keep saying that and I feel the resistance all the time. All the time I get people saying, I don't want to journal. Well, don't call it journaling then. Call it something else. Give it another label that you do like. Because there is something that happens when you write things down. And it is different than when you use a computer screen. And if you don't believe me, look it up. The science is there to back it up. There is a cognitive connection that we have to our emotions and to our memory when we use our hand as a writing tool to write things down as opposed to typing on a keyboard. But you can use the Notes app if you like the Notes app. But you can even use your iPad or your tablet and just use the stylus and write in your notes. because again, you're looking for that connection. We're writing down important things and important parts of experiences and our expectations and goals and those types of things. So memory is really, really important. That's why I'm giving you the qualification here of you can do all these different things, but really pencil or pen and paper, in my experience, it has gotten me the best results. So that's why when I go even to writing retreats and writing camps, I use a notebook and pencil and paper. Even though like there's no spell check, there's no like, ah, crud, you're crossing stuff out. Who cares? It's a sloppy mess. Who cares? Sometimes getting at your thoughts is a sloppy process, and that's okay. So you can use this space to journal and just write things down and get at them and write again and read it and look at it. And so you're making meaning from your experience and your expectations and goals. So you're not only just trying to figure out if those expectations are realistic, if your goals are realistic, if they are on target for what you even say you want. A lot of times that's the thing too, is we say we want one thing, but really we're after something else. And we don't even realize that there's a disconnect in the whole process of thinking and working towards something. So this is a way to also make meaning out of your experiences, those expectations, and those goals. And then you're also looking to challenge unrealistic thoughts and desires so that you can reset your thinking to reflect positive and attainable thoughts and desires. That has to be a part of the process. And you can use this again when we're talking about the perfectionism, you can use it anywhere. When you're setting goals, when you are starting a new job, when you are deciding if you want to stay at a job, if you're deciding how do you make a, relationship work, how do you develop, this or that with one of your kids when you're still raising them or when they're older or a loved one or a friend or whatever. These are all skills that you can use in all these different areas of life. You don't just use them compartmentally, just like, oh, I can only pull this out when it's for this. These are skills. This cognitive behavioral therapy, all these techniques are transferable in all these different areas of your life. So when you're practicing them here and getting better at them here, you'll start to notice other areas where you can do these same exercises, and they're really powerful. A lot of times, too, you keep hearing me say this, these are the exercises that help you realize you need to set new goals and standards. And, you're identifying where you're off or noticing that you've changed, and you're making a very intentional readjustment here. So that's the other cool thing about writing things down is it's like committing it to the page. It's very intentional. You're looking at these things also without judgment. So again, not doing that guilt and shame thing. You're not trying to be like labeling it with judgment, but instead, looking at it with those gray areas or looking at it in its full color instead of trying to get down to that black or white, right or wrong kind of thinking. Like, don't allow that into this process either. This is supposed to be more of a creative process, which a lot of people enjoy. So if you think about it like a creative process, like you're creatively trying to get into the heart of the matters that matter to you the most, then it might make it suck less too. Another strategy of CBT is trying out some new thinking and actions in low stake opportunities. So I do this a lot with my college students. I've been in higher ed for the last decade. And when I have my students doing these different assignments, I give them these really challenging assignments that challenge them to practice all these things. Like, here's an opportunity to practice all these things, and the stakes are really low. So they're not going to get like a failing grade from just trying it. They're not going to lose out on their spot in the class. They're not going to lose friends over it. They're not going to lose anything like that over it. They're just going to learn. There's so many unlimited ways that they can learn. And so if you think about like, what can you do? Pick something you like doing and maybe pick something like you like doing with other people, and then you set that up and you're trying to try these things out when the stakes are not as high. So it's not like this, live or die type of a situation where it's like, God, if I try these things out, we're going to end up in divorce court, or this person's going to ghost me and cancel me. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. So find things that you really, really like to do and try these things out, or just try one of the things out. I'm telling you, like, I really, really love this. practice. I do this a lot with, I love to be active. I like to be outdoors. I like to be active. So I'll tend to try to pick something that's both outdoors and active. It doesn't even matter what it is. I like so many things. And I will, try to get individuals to go with me. And the really cool thing about this is that when you start with this kind of canvas to set yourself up doing something you already enjoy doing, you automatically enhance your sense of accomplishment and those healthy emotions. So you're already setting yourself up with kind of like an excitement and anticipation that's not like, this has to be perfect. The anticipation is, I really love doing this. I really love spending time with these individuals. And you see the pattern of emotions is already continuing to create this chain and this momentum of positive stuff instead of the dread and the like, oh, I've got to go and try to get along with this person again at the whatever, pick something you don't like doing. Like, I don't know, doing chores. I hate doing chores, you know, like don't use that as your, I mean, sometimes you have to do that, but I'm saying in this exercise, set yourself up to do something you enjoy doing. And again, it could just be this solo thing where you're just doing it by yourself, trying to see like, can I do this? Or can I try something new and be good to myself? And what are my expectations of this? I was reminded, it's just reminding me of something a couple of summers ago. I go and visit a friend's dad who has a house and a cabin next door to his house on this private lake. And I love to paddleboard. I love it. And over the years, I've gotten really good at doing it. And I can just walk off the boardwalk and just step onto it and start paddling. I don't have to go down, sit and kneel and get in the water. And and really, it just comes from a confidence that's like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? I'm going to fall in the water. Like I can touch the water here. I know how to swim. It's a calm lake. Like again, low stakes. So the high risk thing, like we could name all that stuff out, but the stakes are low. If things don't go as it planned, the stakes are low. And so I was paddling around the lake one day, and there was a whole group of women who came from a woman's getaway weekend. And I ended up going over to them because they were sitting on the paddle boards and they were just kind of like hanging out. And they were like, look at you, girl, blah, 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 saying all this stuff and really encouraging me, like, wow, I'm so jealous. Look at you. You're like a boss. And I kind of paddle over to them and I start talking to them. And I shared that principle with them, was like, well, and I just said, hey, do this, do that. Like I knew what worked. And I'm also a teacher. So I also knew that if I just encouraged them a particular way and approached it a particular way, I could encourage them to do this low stakes thing. And when I started telling them what's the worst thing that could happen and all this stuff, the next thing you know, they're standing up on their boards and they're out there paddling and they're talking to me about other stuff. And it was this beautiful moment. And at the end, the one looked at me and she was like, "Ah, thank you. Like you made me believe in myself." And I was like, nah, I didn't make you do anything. I just showed you already had what it took. So that thing you saw in me that you were saying, oh, I wish I had that, you have it too. And it was this really amazing moment while we're on paddle boards. And here's the thing that I didn't say was that I had just been meditating before I went on that paddle around the lake about how I need to interact with women more and how I need that sisterhood and that community. And so here I was also in that interim, not just going over to encourage someone else, I was stepping out and doing something that made me a little uncomfortable because I was dealing with my fears of rejection and my fear of failure in a different capacity while I was going into someone else's environment to help them deal with theirs and confront theirs and master it. And so it was, we just don't know what the other person wants to get out of something or could benefit in a situation. And we only know what ours is. So that's just the beauty of setting ourselves up like that. That's a perfect end example that I want to leave you with, is that sometimes we set ourselves up or we just go out there and look for the opportunity. We might not set ourselves up. We just go, okay, I'm open to trying this. And when you open yourself up to trying it, God, the universe will let it fall into your lap. And that's another truth that is part of my experience. When I open myself up to that, those experiences just tend to just come out of nowhere. And it's like, very interesting. How ironic that I was thinking about I should try that or I should practice that, and here, boom, here it is. So it's just a way to think about it too, is maybe think about it from a more spiritual or a more natural, organic aspect, is that when we open ourselves up to it and just say, I'm going to step out and just know that when the opportunity presents itself, I'm going to do these things, then the opportunity is bound to present itself in the very near future. It's just the way things work. So when we work through these uncomfortable things, I promise that this work pays off in ways that we didn't even imagine. As we slowly confront our thinking and behavior and adjust these things moving forward, we are confronting our fear and anxiety and stress head on. We are also growing into more refined versions of ourselves. I'm reminded of a proverb about being refined like gold. How the refining process brings us closer to perfection by burning off the imperfections. Yet, gold cannot be formed into a solid without some presence of impurities and metals which are there to bind it together. 100% gold is liquid. The higher the percentage of gold, the weaker it is. That's the catch-22 of it, for the gold and for us. So perhaps perfection is simply a result of us continuing to refine our thinking, our actions, and then our reactions as we grow into more beautiful versions of ourselves. All the while, our imperfections shape us and hold us together.
Well, girl, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, don't forget to follow my channel and share it with girlfriends who also want to restore their self-worth and confidence. Also, if this podcast inspired you, consider leaving a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts. And as you go through your day, may your empowered spirit, heart, and mind guide you. Catch new episodes every Tuesday and Friday. Ciao.